And welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Talk podcast. I'm your host, Reno, alongside me co-host Dan Kiley, episode 90 of the Talk podcast. Me and Dan were just talking about it right before the show, actually. It is about, I believe we said 59 episodes together. 59. I want to say we started at 31. Not quite sure on that because I know we got some notes going back till then, but it may have been episode 30. I haven't checked this yet, so I'm not sure. But it's about 59 or 60 episodes of the Talk podcast between the two of us. Really excited to get into this. 9 more episodes, Dan, or 10 more episodes till episode 100. That one's going to be a blast. I'm looking forward to that one. To kick off the show real quick, I am going on vacation starting next week. So we won't have the Talk for maybe about 2 weeks, depending on if I can get some decent internet. You at least won't see me. Now, if Dan wants to do a show, we want to get a sub, we can make that happen.
That might could happen.
We can make that happen. So we'll see. But if not, tonight's the last show for me, at least for 2 weeks. But Dan, we got some hot topics. We got a loaded show today. Let's get right into it. Hot topic number 1. I don't know where you're going with this one. I already kind of gave you my answer for this one. Who is your favorite college football super fan or troll? Dan, the floor is yours.
So I have a lot of different ones that I like. Okay, so like honorable mentions, Frank the Tank for the New York Mets. That guy's hilarious. I know like we're supposed to take him seriously, but I don't. I think it's. I mean, he's a real person, and I'm not making fun of the guy or anything like that. But he's absolutely hilarious. The rants that he goes on. So that's an honorable mention, Frank the Tank for me. And then another honorable mention for me, and I'm only saying these because I know Harrison's not going to pick these, so I wouldn't steal his thunder that way. Other honorable mention for me is Ray from UGA. I think that was his name, the guy who's like kind of muscle bound, and he pretended that like Dan Mullen was trying to have him killed or something like that. That guy was a trip. I loved it. Like now, I know a lot of people like got really offended by that guy, but he was absolutely hilarious. But anyway, the winner, hands down, the number one best sports troll in the history of the world, isn't team specific, but he is country specific. That is the USA, the southern of the the south of the Mason-Dixon line. That would be 3-year Letterman. 3-year Letterman is actually a lawyer from up north who has this persona of being a youth high school football legend who did not finance his waterbed. He has a Ford Taurus that's fully paid off. He has an unlimited DVD collection, and he gets a standing ovation every time he walks into Beef O'Brady's, and he has his own seating section. That guy is absolutely a trip. He is hilarious. Not only that, he's extremely intelligent. He's witty. Everything he says is funny. It's topical. The guy's a genius. I don't know how much money he makes off of doing that. I don't know why he started it, but I enjoy it. I love it. It's never gotten old to me. He keeps it fresh. So for me, the winner, hands down, and I dare you to find somebody even close to this guy, is 3-year Letterman. Harrison, give it your best shot, bro. But I'm telling you, shots fired. You can't get close to 3-year Letterman.
3-year Letterman wasn't even a guy that I even thought about when we were talking about this. That's actually
really
no. I'd never even thought about him. Now I know who he is. I've seen him on the timeline. That dude goes viral about every other day. Back in the World Cup, getting into fights with the British. You know, spoons versus forks. It was great. How many SEC championships do the British have? Still none, as far as we know. But Dan, the one that I'm going with, he's an actual fan. Now, I will say he is a Georgia troll, but also he's a SEC troll. And it's our guy, Vern Funquist, actual name, Chris Mahler. Dude works for Saturday Down South, covers the SEC as they do, but he's a Bama fan, noted Bama fan, but he's an SEC troll. Does a really good job trolling Georgia fans. I see it all the time, Dan. The amount of tweets he puts out, they're just provoking for everybody. I don't know if I found somebody that control all fans like he does. Now, I also wanted to say another one, and I'm going to call him a super fan because I'm not going to call him troll. Sam Block, Ohio State. That dude, whatever he does, that business model is booming for him Because I remember back in the lead up to that Georgia Ohio State game, you know what I'm talking about, Dan. Man, was he getting under people's skin? A lot. So Vern Funquist, I may not see eye to eye with you on your hot takes or your opinion, your opinion on Georgia, but hey, I'm gonna give you some credit here. You are my favorite super fan slash troll. I wanted to go Quavo here, Dan, but if you ever listen to the Pump Pass podcast with Drew Butler, you would know that Drew Butler thinks if Georgia Tech was good, Quavo would be a Georgia Tech fan. That
Of
his
course he
allegiances
would.
aren't there.
Same with Ludacris and all those guys. Like they're Atlanta and they want whatever's hot because it's good for business. So I mean that's not a hot take. That's
Not a hot take.
accurate.
Okay, Dan agrees. We're not gonna agree on this one, Dan. I don't know where you're going with this one. I don't know what type of wings you like, Dan. What is your favorite wing flavor?
So my favorite wing flavor would be a buffalo and a really really hot buffalo. Now there are plenty of good ones. Like my son, his favorite is lemon pepper. Um, Jeremiah Jonathan, we're talking about lemon pepper slaps, but they don't want it from Magic City. Okay, let me tell you something. All right, you may have ethics about going to Magic City, and that's fine. But don't diss the wings from Magic City. There's no glitter in those wings, Jonathan. Zero glitter in those wings. I'm telling you, they are fire. They're absolutely delicious. I have had some before, have not been to Magic City, but I've had Magic City wings. They come sloppy or dry, however you want them. They are absolutely freaking delicious. I'll tell you what, the best wings I've ever had is my next door neighbor, a guy named Ed. He said smoked wings and he did this this rub in them and then put them in the sauce, and I don't even know what the hell it was, but that was the most delicious thing I've ever had. And he made them for, I think it was for the national championship game. And I didn't want to be that guy, but I really wanted to eat all the wings that he had made, but they were delicious. But like for me, it's just a really hot one with some ranch. So I am not a blue cheese guy.
No, blue cheese, stay over there. Dan, well, it seems like I'm going to go with the easy answer, and it's actually, I haven't always been a lemon pepper guy, but I've recently gotten into them, recently gotten into the dry rubs. Man, do those things slap. Like Jonathan Jeremiah said, lemon pepper with hot sauce is really good. I'm going with the lemon pepper dry. I'm here for it. It's really good. Got into it over the last month. I used to be a mild wing guy, but now I'm just a lemon pepper guy. And hey, we'll go back and forth on this one. We'll change it up every once in a while. I'm not a big spicy guy, so I don't know if I'll do the hot sauce. But hey, I'll go with some lemon peppers.
I have to tell you though, I think it's Wild Wings. It's either Buffalo Wild Wings or Wild Wings. One of the two places they have this hot habanero like barbecue, I don't know what like ghost pepper barbecue or something. It is absolutely hot, but it's just the right mix between super hot and sweet, and it's actually really really good. But anyway, that's we don't want to go down that road too long. But let's go ahead and get to the meat on this bone, Harrison.
Yeah. We had some big news. It's transfer news. Now, it's not transfer portal news as in the NCAA. This is high school transfer news. The type of transfer news that you didn't think you would come to a college program to get, but when it covers the number one player in the country who just so happens to be committed to the University of Georgia, we got to talk about it. Dan's very familiar with this program. Dan's really familiar with the Georgia high school football landscape. So we're bringing this on, trying to get his take on this. Dylan Raiola, the 2024 quarterback commit to the University of Georgia, number one quarterback, number one prospect in this class, announced just the other day that he is transferring from Pinnacle out in Arizona all the way to the East Coast here in Georgia to go to Buford. It's been in the rumor mill for a while now. It really wasn't a secret that everyone was talking about, like, hey, Buford's about to have a Georgia commit transfer to their school, this, that, and I mean, it was everywhere from what I've seen on the on the timeline recently leading up to it. Not really a surprising decision, but a really big move for Buford. Last year, they pulled in Justice Haynes, one of the top running back recruits in the country last year. Now they get Dylan Raiola. Dan, this can only mean good things for them. And hey, Jeremiah and Jonathan, we're going to a Buford game. We've already got it set. The boys will be meeting up for a Buford game next fall. Go check out Dylan Raiola. Dan, what's your take on this?
Well, first of all, let me correct you. You're going to go to a Mill Creek game, and Mill Creek will be hosting Buford. So you're going to go to a Mill Creek game, and Buford will be there, so you'll have a chance to see him. Now, listen, I see a lot of people go on and they want to talk about they know this, that, or the other, or they think they know this, that, or the other. I have something that I call the well, I don't call it. It's Chuck Oliver actually came up with it. He called it the Peter King theory. Right? There are certain people. And I'm just gonna name names of people that I know because I can protect, like I can control that narrative. So, like you got people like Brooks, you have people like Jeremiah, you have people that or Jonathan, you, for example, friends, right? You may know more about the Georgia program. You're going to know more about the Georgia program than somebody like Steve Wilfong. Okay. Now, in no way, shape, or form would you say that you're a better media personality or whatever than Steve Wilfong. Steve Wilfong knows more about every single university in person than you do. Okay. He knows more, but you know more about the Georgia program than he does. Now he knows the 40,000 foot looking down, and he can hit all the bullet points, but he doesn't know the in and outs of that roster, and he doesn't know it like you do because it's something that you follow very closely. Well, that being said, you have to understand what age my son is. Okay, so my son is in high school now. My son has played in the GFL since he was 6 years old. So all of the kids at Buford, all the kids at Mill Creek, all the kids at Seconder, because they're actually Mill Creek kids, the kids at Mountain View, I know these kids. I know their parents. I've spent Saturdays with these people since we were 6 years old. So for over 10 years, I've been around these people. So when I say, like, I know Buford, the in and outs of it. Oh, and by the way, I cover them on the radio for WDUN. It's they are the flagship team of the radio station. That in Gainesville, those are the two flagships of WDUN, is Gainesville and Buford. So I talk to those people all the time, and those the ins and outs. My biggest issue with all of this is Buford and Mill Creek used to take a lot of pride in being homegrown. Everything they did was homegrown. Buford obviously is starting to get away from that. They're starting to bring in transfers. To the most people, it doesn't matter. To me, it does, because the issue is that you have kids who have grown up in that program, done things the right way, and been part of that program since they were 6 years old. Now these kids are getting pushed out because they're going to go out and recruit the biggest, baddest dude. And I get it. That's how college is supposed to be. That's not how high school is supposed to be. Now, do I think it's cool that Dylan Raiola is going to be in our backyard and I can watch him anytime I want? Absolutely. And the kid's an absolute massive talent, and good for him. And yeah, I don't put any. This is a difficult one because it's not Buford's fault. Okay. The kid was going to move across country here. He did his due diligence. And if you're doing your due diligence and you look at all the different schools, how do you not come away with Buford as your answer? I mean, at Mill Creek, we deal with that every single day because kids leave Mill Creek and go to Buford. There are 12 to 15 kids on that roster right now that are Mill Creek kids because they went over there because they thought it was a better opportunity, better facilities, better whatever, more publicity, whatever. But they're there. So, him coming to Buford is good for him and it's good for Buford, I guess, the name brand, but it's really not good for the kids that have tried to do things. I mean, God's sakes, the quarterback that was going to be the quarterback, I'm not going to say his name. I don't want to do that to him, but putting his house on the market, moving. He's got to find a new place. He's a senior. He doesn't have any other options. He's got to find another place to play if he wants to play, because you're not starting over Dylan Raiola. I don't know if I shared it with you guys, but he was on social media saying, hey, you can crank up the rumor mill all you want to. All you just need to know I'm QB1. This is my school. This is my, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, I got to move. So, it's bad for him, but it's actually really cool to have somebody that talented in your backyard. But we're about to see Harrison, some dominoes fall, and you're going to have a lot of collateral damage. I mean, my son could be collateral damage. I mean, Buford's got 8 quarterbacks. All 8 of them could transfer to Mill Creek. I don't know. I mean, it's the closest school to them. That or Lanier. They're not going to Lanier. I promise you that. So there's going to be a lot of collateral damage, and I hope this isn't a trend that continues. Now, there are positives. I'll let you hit on some positives, and then I'll come back to it.
Yeah, there's absolutely some positives, and we do want to get into a narrative in a minute here surrounding the transferring high schools, kind of what Dan's kind of hitting on, and we'll get to that in a minute. But hey, Georgia has two other really big recruits at Buford that now Dylan Raiola's teammates. Now, this is not coordinated in any way, but Kirby Smart and co. They had nothing to do with this.
Is it? Are we sure?
I'm sure they advised. I'm sure they said, hey, here's some of the top programs. Like, hey, you do your own research, and if you need anything, ask us. But man, could this be a huge domino fall in Georgia's direction with Edric Houston, the 5-star defensive lineman, one of the top defensive linemen in the country, if not the top one, depending on what outlet you look for your recruiting for. And then KJ Bolden, 5-star safety. He's positioned as an athlete when you look at his recruiting profile, but you speak with anybody who covers Georgia and is an insider in this Georgia space, will tell you he's being recruited to Georgia to go play safety. That's where he's going to play. That's his future. That's what Georgia wants them to do. Those are two huge dominoes yet to fall in this recruiting class. Obviously, right now, it's looking like Georgia's battling with Ohio State for both prospects. And hey, having Raiola, having a Bulldog on campus there, huge prospect there. I can't say enough good things about what that could mean for Georgia in the future, because obviously there is that narrative. Georgia fans have been burned by Buford prospects in the past, most recently for Alabama. Jake Pope, one comes to mind. Justice Haynes, another one comes to mind. Just two, Buford's bigger prospects that, hey, Georgia was in on, Georgia was after, and they went to Alabama. So, hey, a little bit of a chance here to get a Buford kid here in Athens. And hey, maybe he brings two with him. Elite quarterbacks. People want to play with elite quarterbacks, Dan. That's what people have been telling us for years. And Georgia's going to get to see that. Can Georgia go pull a Jeremiah Smith? Can they go pull an elite receiver, an elite safety, an elite defensive end? People want to play with elite quarterbacks, what we've been told. We're going to see if that's true or not here at Buford. Dan, let's get into the narratives here. The narrative that is quickly building on this, and it's a topic that I believe we've discussed here surrounding high school transfers, especially with the news of Jermaine Burton and Bear Alexander recently going into the portals and going elsewhere. The two main things that connects Jermaine Burton and Bear Alexander are what they have in common. Well, obviously, they're both highly recruited out of high school, highly recruited talents, highly recruited prospects. Both are somewhere else after starting their career at Georgia. Well, they also play for multiple high schools. Now, circumstances are different, as we're going to get into with Dylan. There are obviously circumstances for each and every person that transfers. For Bear Alexander, I believe he was going to not be able to play for the high school he was at in Texas, which made him transfer to IMG, if I'm not mistaken. Jermaine Burton, I don't remember specifics on him and why he transferred, but we do know for Dylan, he wasn't going to be eligible for, I believe Dan told me, the first half of the season up into Arizona after transferring from Chandler to Pinnacle. Dan, this is Dylan Raiola's fourth high school in 4 years, and the narrative's already building that, hey, this dude has commitment issues. Is this something that we even remotely need to be discussing, or is it just another case of, hey, rival fans a little salty that Georgia's, has something good going on at quarterback potentially?
So I think it's very topical and it's very trendy and now and it's very top of mind because you just had Barry Alexander leave, you had Jermaine Burton leave, and it seemed like those kids were jumping around. And there's always reasons to everything, and you do have to look at what those reasons are. However, if you look at why Dylan was going to come to Georgia to do this, it makes a lot of sense, right? It's very hard to argue against. You have a kid who has 1 year left of high school eligibility. You have a 10-game season, and you're going to be suspended for 5 of them. Now, that didn't sit well with Dylan. It didn't sit well with his father, and it damn well didn't sit well with the Pinnacle head coach. The Pinnacle head coach is like, dude, you're handicapping my team. So I think there was a lot of push, and I can't prove it. I don't have any inside knowledge. I mean, again, you can just go off of what you've been told. And what I've been told is that it was a mutual thing where they were like, you might want to go find somewhere else to play because we got to have a quarterback for all 10 games, right? So moving to Georgia will allow him to play the entire season. Okay, that's the first thing. Two, his father, and you either believe it or you're not, and I choose to believe it. Okay, the father said that he had conversations with Tua's family because Tua's from Hawaii. They're from Hawaii, and they talked about how the amount of travel. It's not that they couldn't afford it or anything like that, because I think they're all wealthy, but it's that it's just nonstop, and it's very time consuming, and is going back and forth. So imagine that Dylan's brother had stayed at Pinnacle, okay, and was the quarterback starting as a sophomore at Pinnacle. So they would have to be in Arizona on Friday night, fly out to Georgia on Saturday night, and then go back, back and forth, just every single weekend, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it gets old, right? So the one thing that Tua's family said is that I guess they had done that the first year. Then after that, they moved to Alabama to be close to the campus, and life was just so much better. They got it was his little brother Tulia or something. Anyway, they got Tua's little brother enrolled into a high school. I want to say, was it Hoover? I don't think it was Hoover, but it was somewhere close to Alabama. And that way it was just much more manageable, and they just enjoyed it. They were able to have a lot more family time, spend a lot more time with their son, right? And they said that if they could pass along any information to the father, that's what they would do. And then he also talked to Bryce Young's parents, and they said that being close to your son is everything. Living in SEC country is everything, and they should, they recommended that they do this not so much for Dylan, but for the younger brother, Dayton, to get him close to his brother, and then that way they would be able to there to support him. And that's the part that I think is being glossed over, is that I would be more concerned if Dylan came out here like Jake Garcia by himself, right? Was doing this on his own. I'd be concerned. But the entire family's moving. They're bringing the little brother, and he's enrolling in the same high school. And I think it's a long play for them. I think they're going to be part of the Buford community. So I understand the criticism. I understand the questions. I'm not saying that they're 100% unwarranted to ask, but I'm saying in this particular situation, I think it was the right move for the family, and I don't see anything nefarious with it. I just don't. Does that make sense? I mean, like I don't call shenanigans on this one. I think it's a legit move.
I agree. When you put it that way, it does seem legit. It's not just for Dylan. It's not just for 1 year. It is, like you said, a long play. Dayton Raiola, Dylan's little brother, I want to say he's 15. Going to be, I believe he's going to be a rising sophomore at Buford.
2026.
2026, yeah. So, that's two Raiola brothers at Buford for potentially the next 3 years. Gonna be a fun thing to watch. Obviously, Dayton was on visits with Dylan. There's some photos of them together in Georgia jersey. Potentially another Georgia commit that Georgia can kind of get to know. But yeah, I agree with Dan here. I don't think it's malicious. I don't think this is as egregious as others. I do think, yes, there are some high school prospects that transfer around just for transferring sake, because either something doesn't go their way or this, that, and the other. But I'm not worried about this. From the comments, I read an article the other day, a few weeks back. Apparently, I don't know. I need to go back and do my research on it. But apparently, Dominic Raiola, the dad of Dylan Raiola, said that he's not going to allow Dylan to have NIL until he earns it, till he gets on the field and earns that money. Which, that's very similar to what the Manning said when Arch picked Texas. Is he's not going to accept an NIL deal till he earns it, till he gets on the field. A very professional approach. Obviously, Dominic and the Manning family both played in the NFL for a long time, so that's just how their recruitment's going to be. So I don't, like Dan said, I don't see any malicious intent here. I don't think it's, as Dan said, shenanigans. A legit move for the better of the family, and also did want to note this, that Dylan's older sister plays volleyball at TCU. So obviously they're a little bit. I don't know if they're closer. I don't know if there's any difference between flying to the Fort Worth area from Arizona, or I guess the Atlanta area. So interested to see how that works out. But as Dan said, it's better for the family with them being in Georgia. Dan, let's wrap up the show today with a recruiting wrap up while we're here to talk about today. Good segue. and from the Dylan topic into what Georgia's recruiting outlook looks like heading into the month of July. We are fastly approaching one of the last weekends of visits. I believe it is the last weekend of recruiting visits for the month of June, and I believe we're heading into a dead period after this. No on-campus visits, no in-person contact, I believe it is. I think until like August, or maybe there's like 1 week in July where they can come up and be on campus. But hey, anyways, it's been an eventful month for Georgia and for Georgia fans. You've had 4 commitments. You missed, quote unquote, missed on a prospect in Sammy Brown, 5-star linebacker out of Georgia. Dan will give his take on him in a little bit. But I mean, it's been pretty eventful. These visit weekends here in June are usually very impactful for Georgia, whether it's immediately or down the road. I don't know if we've ever seen a June like this for Georgia, where they've come out of the gate early in the process and have just racked up those commitments. They are currently the number 1 ranked recruiting class in the country. Now, obviously, it's still June. A lot can change. There's been years where they've been ranked outside of the top 10 in June. I believe it was either last year or 2 years ago, they were missing on prospects left and right. They wanted just the way it was. But hey, once January, December came around, Georgia flips back, and what do you know? They're in the top 4, in the top 5. So still very early in the process. A lot of momentum has been built up, Dan. Dan, let's just get your take first before we get to Sammy Brown. I mean, what's been your take on recruiting this month?
Well, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. We were kind of talking about this when we had our little pre-show call earlier today, where a lot of times you have a lot of these programs that have no business being in the top 5 early because they have a larger quantity of guys signed. It's very difficult to judge a recruiting class this early because a lot of your big fish are not committed, right? So, we were just playing, for instance, Georgia could be ranked 8 or 9. Now, granted, I understand they're number 1, but they could be 8 or 9, right? But on National Signing Day, if they get the commitment from 3 or 4 different 5-star players, you're going to vault up to number 1, right? Because you may be behind Michigan, who's got 23, but they're all 3 and 4 stars, right? So, and the majority of them are 3 stars, even some of them are 2 stars. And then all of a sudden you start adding your 5 stars on there, you're going to jump right to the head of the list. So and the other thing is we are so far away, right? How many of these kids are going to get processed out where, they're committing now? I see a lot of 3 stars and God bless them, because if you look through the history of Georgia, a lot of our best players ended up being 3 stars. I mean, or no stars like Stetson, but like Jordan Davis was a 3-star. And I mean, I can make an argument, and I'm not saying I'll win it, but I can make an argument that Jordan Davis is the best player in the last 10 years at the University of Georgia. I can make that argument. Again, like I said, I may not win the argument, but I can make it. But in a lot of these 3 stars are offense and defensive linemen, right? And it's always been my theory that a lot of these offensive and defensive linemen don't get evaluated properly. And if you look at a guy like, Trey Scott, or who's our defensive line coach? Help me, bail me out.
Trey Scott.
Yeah, Trey Scott. I don't know why I thought I was wrong. So if you look at Trey Scott, I give him a lot of credibility, or I will give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, if he says this guy can play, who am I to say he can't, right? Who is anybody else to say he can't? Because that guy has been in the same room with Jordan Davis and Carter and Stackhouse. I mean, all these different guys, right? I mean, the guys, Warthall, Walker, I mean, just name them. Just a bunch of guys that we just got drafted. He's been in the same room. And if he looks at these kids and is like, yeah, I can get something out of that, bro, I'm on board. Like, I got you, bro. So and one of the other things that we mentioned in our conversation was that Georgia does a really good job of kind of just adding one. So they're always in the stream of consciousness. But to your point, and I think we're both on the same page with this, Harrison, is that I don't get overly excited about June or July. Like, come November, December, I'll get much more excited, and I will be much more interested in what the class looks like, because that's closing time. and Kirby and his staff have proven they can close with the best of them. So I will be excited then.
Absolutely, and rightfully so. As you said, it's closing time. Georgia does flip. Some people come November and December. Right now, I mean, Dan, it's hard not to get excited. At least for me, when I'm looking at the board and saying, "Hey, right now you've only missed on one prospect, and that's Sammy Brown, 5-star linebacker out of Jefferson, really good prospect, highly rated, highly touted. Went to Clemson. Clemson shut him down even before he went on a visit Georgia, at least this summer. So that's the only miss. But Dan, I have a hard time not getting excited when I turn on the tape for Jordan Thomas. I watched it right after he committed. Man, was I impressed. Was in our text chat talking about him. Really impressed by him. Chauncey Bowens, if you haven't checked out Brooks Austin's breakdown of him, impressive prospect. Maybe not somebody that people saw coming. The 4-star running back, flipped from Florida into Georgia's class. Really good speed in the open field. An intelligent runner, intelligent in space. Just all around looking like another dude that Del McGee has reeled in there. Latest commitment, Quintavious Johnson. Not a well-known prospect. I know nothing of him, so I'm not even going to comment on that. But from what it seems this is another example of Georgia finding a guy, finding a dude, and saying, "Hey, come join the class. We want you here." So, like Dan said, hey, Trey Scott or Chidera Uzo-Derive or Kirby Smart say, "Hey, we want this kid." Who am I to judge him? Who am I to say no? So, really, really fun month of June. They've had a number of elite prospects on campus over the last few weeks, and we'll wrap it up this weekend. Dan, anything else before we wrap up the show?
It is NFL or NBA draft time, so I need us to go ahead and wrap this up so I can go check out and maybe learn something about these guys, because God knows we're going to have 2 players out of a whole freaking draft that are any good.
Yeah, we were talking about that pre-show. Not a big NBA draft guy over here. Obviously, with me covering the NFL, just natural born affection. But like Dan said pre-show, when you have 3 rounds of guys that could, potentially all be dudes compared to 4 or 5 picks, I don't know. You go tell me what you're interested in. Guys, that's going to wrap it up for episode 90 of the Top Dog Talk podcast. I'm host Harrison Reno, alongside me co-host Dan Kiley. Like I said, I will not be here for 2 weeks. If Dan wants to be here for the next 2 weeks, he is more than welcome. We will find a fill-in at the least to come help facilitate the show. I already got 2 candidates in mind.
Well, Harrison just dropped off, and I'm not good at this. So, as always, thank you for watching the show. Please like, subscribe, do all the work for us. Please share with your friends. And as always, and welcome back, Harrison. But I'm going to close it out anyway. So anyway, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about our show. And as always, go Dogs.